I'm happy to announce we have our third t-shirt in our series. This one says Wood for Good. It's in military green. We've enlarged the logo to make it easier to see. Help us spread our cause. Get yourself a t-shirt.
We're live right now.
No.
We are?
That much time? Hi folks, welcome to whatever number this is, our Saturday night substitute for date night. And this is our question and answer. So there's a bunch of questions, we're going to get to them. And we're also going to try to bring in some live ones, so if you have a good question, we got the Colonel, he's sorting through. If he sees a good one, he'll text it to Frick and we'll be able to bring it up. So I need to introduce the crew tonight. Jake's behind the camera. Do a quick swing around, Jake. They always like to see you. They're always asking. Do a swing around. There you go. Smile big. Now over here we have Megan, Jake's wife. What are you doing tonight, Megan? Oh, you're tracking PHP donations. And over here we have Mark Smith.
That
Mark?
is his real name too.
Yes, it is.
It's not just an alias.
He picked one that would be easy to remember. Mark, if you can't tell by the arms, is combat engineer, Canadian Army. He's still active duty, and Mark started working here with us a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Been paid yet?
Fortunately, yeah. Super lucky to come out here. Love it. Super welcoming. Everybody here is amazing. You're getting to learn a lot of stuff.
We pay him to say all that.
Good food too.
Yeah, great food. Thank you.
So in behind Frick is Rex. Rex is my oldest son. Rex started working here with us, working on tool production. What are you doing tonight, Rex?
I don't know, same as I do every Saturday night.
Yeah, he made dinner and he's an excellent cook. But he's also
Rex
the
appears
official,
to be
the
an
official
out-of-work
gopher because he
something.
knows where stuff is. And he also always was a kid that had the memory. He could remember stuff that nobody else could. And last but certainly not least, with the earphones on, Frick.
You get the
who
Frick cam
promises
on?
us a glitch-free evening. And yours truly, I have my voice back, to the chagrin of many. What else are we going to remember? Oh, so just briefly, we're going to bring Ray Doron on tonight. Ray is a Vietnam vet. Ray was in our class this past year. I can't remember what number, and Ray is from Louisiana, and was a great guy to have around. You'll enjoy talking to him. He's got a bit of an accent. I always think of Ray because I always say, Ray used to drive, tell me the name of it, what was it called? What was that little vehicle, the funny looking thing that is named after an animal, isn't it?
Mule.
A mule, right. So the funny story, hopefully I'll tell you tonight, the story about coming down the hill in the mule while the minesweepers were coming up the hill. It's an awkward place to find yourself. So this is we do this every Saturday night, 6 o'clock Eastern. We do it as a service for you, some entertainment hopefully. We also do it as a means of raising funds for our Purple Heart Project. Briefly, Purple Heart Project is a service that we provide to combat wounded veterans 6 times a year, 1 a month from May to October. I'll address that momentarily. We run a 6-day, very intense hand-tool workshop. When I say intense, I mean we start at 8 in the morning and we go until 11 p.m. for 6 days. We learn how to freehand sharpen, we learn how to cut dovetails, we learn how to cut through and half-blind dovetails. We learn how to take a rough board and make it flat, smooth, and square, ready for a finish on all 6 surfaces. We also learn how to cut mortise and tenon joints. We learn how to sharpen planes and chisels. I think I mentioned that. Excuse me, even our dovetail saw. And now we're adding in a new project. We're going to make a candle box. So I've got a few samples here that I just happened to have out the other day, so I'll share them with you. That one's full of money. Can't lift it.
Shh, don't say that out loud.
Oh, no, it's all change.
Just pennies.
Pennies, yeah. So here's a couple of examples. We give you quite a bit of latitude in terms of the lid. The idea is to dimension all the wood. So the wood that we dimension on Wednesday will then be cut up and used on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday as we build the box. Half blind dovetails, you have the option, half blind. You can do through dovetails with a step dovetail, which will allow for a groove to be cut to house the bottom. There'll be some form of a lid. This one had a sliding lid. We may even be able to entertain that if somebody wanted to. And small because you got to be able to travel with it to take it home. And it's challenging. And it'll task you. It'll put you to, it'll challenge you, I guess I should say. Anyway, so that is our Purple Heart project. That's also known as the Training the Hand Workshop. You can find out information about it. Luther will put a link downstairs, not downstairs, down below. And so what we've been interrupted this year. Our May class has been moved to August. Help me. August what?
Well, they know when it is.
Oh, okay. So you know. Why am I telling you? The June class has been moved to October. The July class, the decision will be made on the 21st of June, which is when they open or tentatively are opening the borders. If not, July will be put into first week of November. The good news is that they were going to introduce legislation that meant everybody had to wear a mask in any public building, and they just changed that. So hopefully we're on a good roll. So anyway, in each Training the Hand workshop, there's room for 6 combat wounded vets and 6 civilian spots. Now we have not opened up 2021 for people to sign up because until we find out what's going to happen in 2020, if need be, we have to leave the 2021 available to the people who didn't get to attend 2020 because of the virus. As soon as we do that, we will open it up. If you're a combat wounded vet, if you know of a combat wounded vet, there's just a few stipulations. Number 1, they have to either be active duty or honorably discharged. And they have, unfortunately, they have to be able to prove that. They have to have suffered a combat-related wound, whether it be a physical wound or a mental wound. We recognize both. And they need only to apply. Again, Luther will put it in the section below, the link to the questionnaire that you fill out. And we make the selection twice a year. So Super Dave Benson, who is works with us, he takes care of the August, September, October class, and retired Colonel Luther Shealy takes care of May, June, and July. So December and June, I think, are dates where we stop to make our selection. And if you need any more information about that, don't hesitate to contact us, or even hopefully you can put that in one of the questions for tonight if you have something specific. If you would like to participate and help again, the link will be on there. You can participate monetarily. You can participate in sending us something we can auction off. We had a great, I wish I had it here, I took it home, a beautiful shaker oval box, a number 8, massive thing. And we had some bids on that. We also have a guitar that was donated to be auctioned off. And where is our strummer? That was going to be one of our features tonight, but we haven't found him. Anyway, the only other thing I need to mention is our T-shirts. So we have 3. One says, the most recent one says "Wood for Good." The first one was "Wood is Good," and the middle one is "Wood Doing Good." Has our Purple Heart logo over the left breast, and that is designed to raise awareness. So as you wear it out and about, people will bring up the topic. What is that all about? And that gives you a chance to tell them. And that is how we find these individuals who need our services. Most severely combat wounded vets in terms of PTSD do not leave their homes. So the only way they can find out about this is from somebody they know finding out and making them aware. All right. Am I forgetting anything? I'll just give you a quick overview. This is our current project in our online workshop. And due to a major screw up, we had to redo this. We just did it this last 4 or 5 episodes. Had to take the face of this, which was already finished, and remove a 1/16 of an inch. Then come in and take a piece of cherry and start from scratch. Take a 1/16 of an inch slice and put it back on here so we could save. You have no idea how valuable this piece of wood is. That piece of wood came right off of there. So our next move is to take a thin slice off of here and glue it onto the front of this so that when you put that drawer in there, it'll match. If you come to this end real quick, I'll just show you what I mean. Even though I can't get it out, there's a drawer right there because that piece came out of there. So can we get it out, Jake? No. Well, it'll come out. We're not done. Anyway, I accidentally got the piece that was supposed to be over here turned around, and that's why we had to go through that whole process of starting over. So if that interests you, there's a link down below. You can have a free month. Come on and try it. There's over 2,500 stored episodes of all the stuff that we've done since 2011 when we started doing this. Let's take our first question.
Are we giving away any prizes?
Oh, yes, sorry. So we every time as kind of a reward for those of you who come on here and watch, we give away a $100 gift certificate. We draw names for a $100 gift certificate at every $1,000 increment in donations. So last week we had 6, Megan, and the week before that we had 9. So your call, but we'll give away a $100 gift certificate, and you can use it to buy whatever you want, as long as it comes from our store. All right. Anything from any of you? Oh, yes.
And
Something else?
Before she says the vets, Angie and Lynn are here as well, of course.
And Angie and Lynn, okay, so I'll address that right now. So when you buy a t-shirt, and it comes so nicely folded in a beautiful little sleeve with a picture up in the corner of 2 people. One you may recognize, the other one you may not. I have to introduce you. That would be Angie. Ken Anthony works here with us. Is Ken on tonight?
He said he might make it later.
So this is Ken's cousin. Her name is Angie. And because of an illness, she's confined to her bed. But she's going to get better, she tells me, and she's coming to work here. So Angie and Lynn package all of our t-shirts. And when you get your t-shirt, there will be that little seal, and there'll be an A on there, and that's Angie's A. Big thank you to both of them. Is that in your way?
No.
And last but not least, if you are a combat wounded vet that has been to our class as one of our scholarship vets, we would love to say hello to you and give you a shout out. So all I need you to do is in the comment section, state what class you were in, combat wounded vet, your name, what class you were in. Megan will spot it, tell me, and I'll give you a shout out. And if you are a previous vet, been to one of our classes, we have a new program called the Bench Brigade, where we have civilians who volunteer to build a bench for you and deliver it to you. Isn't that fantastic? We were looking for 36. We ended up with over 80. In fact, we had to halt it at 80 because we have more volunteers now than we have people to get the benches to. Incredible response, absolutely. I tip my hat to you people. It's fantastic.
Speaking of, Jack says to let the gang know that the vices came in.
Pardon? Say that again?
Jack said to let everybody know that the vices have come.
Yes, the vices arrived middle of last week. They're at the front door. They'll start going out this week. So, big job. Huge stack of vices. But yeah, they're on their way. They will be on their way. Awesome. So don't forget, please speak up. Let us give you a shout out and acknowledge your presence tonight.
Yeah, so far we have Kevin Burris.
Hey Kev, how are you, brother?
And we have Gary Burnett.
Gary Burnett. These are our standards. Always great to have you guys.
And Pete.
Pete? Would that be Pete Ambrose? The famous Pete Ambrose? Maker of the Rubo bench? Pete. Pete was on recently. Pete and Ray were in the same class. They were actually side by side, both Vietnam vets. Okay, interrupt me at any time, please.
All right,
Go ahead,
ready?
Frank. Yeah.
So the first question we're actually going to take directly from the chat. It comes from Daniel Martin, and he says...
Daniel, from where?
Doesn't say, but
I'd like to know where.
I'm sure he'll let us know. He says, I have so much trouble getting a full shaving, and I always end up with a hump in the middle of my board when I'm trying to true up the board. Let's know why.
Oh, I hear this one a lot. So what you have to learn how to do, it's almost always, in fact, I'm going to ask Jake, can you think of any time when that type of question or problem was not a sharpening issue?
No.
The only exception I can think of is that it could be a bad plane. Now, if
Blade.
you've got it, well,
Bad
no,
blade.
plane.
Oh, okay.
If you have an inexpensive plane, a lot of times they're not even close to being flat. That may cause a problem. But it's almost always a sharpening issue. So you're trying to get, I don't apologize if if the answers are going to be long, because I'm going to give it to you the way you need to hear it. That was, if you didn't see our toilet paper YouTube we did at the beginning of the coronavirus, that was the piece of paper. That was the piece that we did it with. Maybe Luther will find that and put a link in the.
No, down more. Oh.
Put a link in the description down below. All right, so full width shaving. In order to get that,
The blade in the number 7's really sharp.
your blade has to be straight from here to here. Straight is defined as the shortest distance between 2 points. So how do you do that? Well, let's walk through the process. I'm going to give you a commercial every time I can. If you don't have a good plain screwdriver, so when did we start making these?
Making?
Well, we do. We don't sell them as we get them.
Yeah, but we don't
6 months?
manufacture.
So it's a really stout screwdriver. There's no taper.
Years.
Jake actually goes in and fixes the tip. We wrap it like we do a hockey stick so you can get a great grip on it, and it's really good. You want something, regular screwdriver, the tip is tapered, and that wrecks the top lip on the screw, especially on the brass screws. So that's what's nice about these, is that they fit in there, and that does not happen. So start there. Let's come over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk you through a little bit of this sharpening procedure. There's a few things that you have to remember. First, I'm going to do a little flattening of my 16,000, which is my finishing stone. Some finish with a 6,000, some with an 8. I prefer a 16. Want to keep the stone flat. That's critical too. That's all part of it. Your stone has to be flat. If it's not, then you're not going to have a straight edge. Okay, so here's my blade. I have to hold this the proper way. By that I mean you have to provide weight distribution or pressure evenly across the entire width. If you were to plane like that, what you'll end up doing is taking off more in the middle than you will on the outside. If you plane like this, you're going to take off more on the outside, not in the middle. So believe it or not, that blade will actually flex under the weight of your fingers. Hard to believe, but it's true. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers distributing the pressure uniformly. And that's difficult because you push a lot harder with your index finger than you do with your ring finger or your pinky. And you have to learn to think through those fingers so that you're pushing the same amount, applying the same amount of pressure. When I set that down there, and this is a known flat stone, I set that down there on the primary bevel, I raise up a few degrees, and I do these little circles. Now, while I'm doing that, I'm careful not to make too big circles because then you're rocking like this. So I like to keep them nice and tight. I have light to moderate pressure. Somebody said the other day they liked my description. If you can imagine the amount of downward pressure it would take to gently compress a firm grape, that's about how much. In fact, what I usually do, I'm about 10 seconds of work on this. As soon as I can detect a burr, stop there for a second. Oftentimes when we have a class and we're teaching, people want to know, well, how much pressure do you apply? So I'll get them to lay their hand on the bench, and then I'll come over and I'll put my fingers down like that. And without exception, they're always shocked. Oh, really? That light? Yes, that light. The more pressure you apply, the more likely you are to screw things up. That's just the way it is. Light pressure, lots of control. Excess pressure, you lose control. Now, I need to verify that this edge is straight, and the best way I can do it is by detecting a slight burr that runs corner to corner. If the burr doesn't go corner to corner, then obviously there's a problem. Now there's a few variables, let's check them off. This has to be flat, check that one off. Pressure I applied must be uniform, check that one off. Now if I get a burr, corner to corner, that tells me from here to here should be straight. At that point, I can leave the 1,000 and come to the 16,000. And I'm going to do the same thing I did on the 1,000 with one exception. After locating the primary bevel, that's the big one, I'm going to raise up just a few degrees higher than I was on that first stone. And I'll do the same tight circles. Now this stone has a tendency to wear much quicker than the previous one. So I'm actually, while I'm doing these little tight circles, I'm slowly migrating forward just to spread the wear out evenly. And I do about 10 seconds of work on this one. At the end of 10 seconds, without changing anything, I'm simply going to push down a little harder on the right side of the blade with my right index finger. Then I'm going to push down a little harder on the left side of the blade with my left pinky. Just 3 seconds each. In fact, it takes me longer to explain that than I actually intend to spend doing it. Final step, steel rule on the edge of the stone, lay the blade down on its back, 3 seconds, working right on the edge to remove the burr. That's called the Charlesworth ruler trick. David Charlesworth of England developed that technique back in the early to mid 1970s. And it really didn't become well known until 2003, 4, 5. And now I consider it's probably the single most beneficial, influential aspect of sharpening that I think has ever been brought out. The only thing that would come close to it would be the tertiary bevel. And the tertiary bevel is the tertiary bevel, which is what I did on the 16,000, and the ruler trick combined to make sharpening easy and quick. Okay, chip breakers on, pulled back about a 32nd of an inch from the edge. I'm just going through all the checklist here. Verify that the face of the frog is nice and clean. Put the blade in there. So nice to be able to talk without gasping for air. Put the blade in there. Make sure that it sits firmly on the face of the frog. Put the lever cap on with enough pressure that it'll prevent the blade from sliding accidentally, but still allow me to make adjustments like this. Now, don't forget your magic wax. Commercial number 5. Oh, that one's all worn off. Do I have my other one, Jake? Nope. Yep. It's great stuff for lubricating the sole of your plane so that your effort is spent pushing the blade.
Are you going to use it?
Through the wood, yeah. Yeah, I'm just setting this up first. So your effort is spent pushing the blade through the wood instead of pushing the plane over the wood. Now, I'm holding a plane like this. Can you kind of get a side profile so they can get an idea? So right now, I'm looking right down the sole. If I drop this just a little bit, and to make it even easier, I'm going to put a bright white background. I drop the plane down just a little bit so that I now see the toe and the heel, and there's about an inch apart in terms of looking this way. The throat is right here. So as I start to spin the adjuster knob, that's this thing, and I'm going to spin it in a clockwise rotation. As I spin it, it will eventually pop out. Okay, now I see it, but I see a lot more on the left than I do on the right. And it just shows up as a thin black line. I'm taking the time to do this because so many people don't get this. Since I see more on the left than on the right, that would result in an uneven path or swipe, meaning I would leave more material on one side than the other, and it'll throw the edge out of square. So using my lateral adjustment lever down here, I'm going to push it toward the high side. So if the left is protruding more than the right, I'm going to push it to the left. And in doing so, the blade kind of swings around a little bit so that now it appears to be parallel to the sole. At that point, I'm going to retract the blade by spinning the adjuster knob the opposite way. And as the blade disappears, it allows me to go in and make any corrections. Okay, now I'm fully retracted. No blade exposed at all. A little bit of magic wax on there. I'm going to start calling it that. Now, this is going to allow me to sneak up on the board. So as I start moving the plane, I'm going to start spinning the adjuster knob. And I want to discover where the blade is in terms of projecting through the sole. Okay, I'm getting a lot more shaving on the right than the left, so I'll make a very slight adjustment. I'll finish this pass and start a new one. So what have we got? We got a full width shaving. Looks to be maybe just a little bit heavy on the right. I say that only because if you look right here, you see it's almost translucent right there, and it's obviously heavier here. So a tiny adjustment, moving the blade like that. Let's try it again. Real important that you apply the pressure right down through the middle of the plane. Still a little bit. This is a really fine adjustment if you think about it. That shaving is probably coming off at about 7/10 of a thou.
You can measure it.
That's better. Okay? Hopefully that answers the question. It's almost always in the sharpening. And, oh, you did mention a hump. So the way a plane works, if you think about it, is actually, it almost lose faith in it. A power jointer, your in-feed table, in fact, let's walk over here. When you operate a power jointer, I want to contrast the way the two work because they're radically different. A piece of wood. You going back to work, Mark?
Yeah.
All right.
We're gonna do something.
Yeah, you do. I am looking for a piece of wood. There, this will do. Now I'm going to drop that table down quite a bit so we can exaggerate this. Let's go the other way. I'll take. Now. Okay. This table and that table, this is called your in feed, that's called your out feed, are both supposed to be parallel. They'll be at different heights, but they're supposed to be parallel. The top of the cutting circle, meaning as this thing spins, the top of the cutting circle needs to be on the same height as the out feed table. So as you bring your board along, what gets removed by the cutter head gets compensated for by the outfeed table, and your board is properly supported. And you go all the way across, you end up with a nice straight cut. Now, if you contrast that to the way a hand plane works, you essentially have a flat piece of steel with a blade projecting down the middle. Think that process through, and it says, well, how does that thing even work? Well, it doesn't really, because on a straight edge, it will always eventually take you to a convex surface. If you continue to plane, that's just the way it happens. So rather than try to figure it out, just learn how to work with it. So what I do is I would come in and I would hollow out the middle purposely. And the way I would do it, I'd start here, I would take a pass, and I would continue to go a little farther and come a little farther back. And I might have to come back in here again and take another short pass, always lifting while in a forward motion so as not to leave a skin tag on there. And you would just keep doing that, moving back a little bit each time. I might have to come in and do it again. And then I would eventually make a complete pass, or 2 or 3, until I eventually get it so that that board is nice and straight. So I've created this, and as I start to plane, before it goes back to this, I need to stop at that flat point. Takes a little bit of work. But if you learn to sharpen, this is an easy process. But fighting with a dull blade or a plane not properly set up just makes it so frustrating that people have a tendency to give up. You got to learn how to sharpen. Nothing more to say about that. Next, Frick. I'll try to make some of them. Give us some short ones.
Didn't mean to wake you.
I was talking to Luther. All right. This one comes from Robert Severini from Aurora, Ontario.
I know, Robert.
He says, I'm building a kitchen cabinets, which will be...
I already know this one. Poplar for the fronts.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on using popular for face frames and door rails?
Poplar.
Poplar.
Poplar for face frames and door rails and styles.
Before you answer that, Philip Lawrence is on. Kevin
Hey,
Smira.
Philip?
Kevin Smira.
Hey,
Okay.
Kevin. Kev, tell me your your
So,
tell me your saw showed up, please. I just emailed with him the other day.
Ray is on.
Cool, Ray. Made it home. Good,
That's
brother. We'll be
good.
hearing from you shortly.
Patrick.
Why don't we just set up Kevin right now
Kevin?
Ray.
for next week?
Oh,
Kev Smear, next week, please. We'll chat. What was the question? Oh,
popular.
yeah,
Poplar.
popular, great wood, great paint grade wood. Pretty boring as a for anything else. Great secondary wood, but it'll hold paint well. The advantage it has over pine, it doesn't have that pitch. If you use pine and you paint it and there's any pitch, it'll bleed right through the paint. Poplar is a great secondary wood. In fact, a lot of the furniture you find built, if there's any solid wood in it, regardless of what color it's been stained, it's very often poplar. It's probably the most common secondary wood. Good choice. Frick?
All right, this next one comes from Bob E. It says from KS.
Bob from Kansas City.
If I resaw a 1-inch by 4-inch by 18-inch piece of wood to make a box, should I set the two pieces aside for a period of time to allow for movement, or go ahead and work them right away?
Well, that's not an easy question to answer, simply because how long has the wood been in the environment that you're working? If you just brought wood home from the lumberyard and it's either more moist or less than your environment, and you split it open down the middle, it's going to move. I think your best bet is always to, if you're going to do that, is to rip it wider than you want and let it stand, let it sit. And when you let it sit, I always, my drawer parts in particular, stand them on edge. Don't lay them flat. If you lay I'm looking for some drawer parts. If you lay your drawer parts flat, then the moisture is only going to is going to more conveniently either escape or get absorbed on the open side than it is going to be on the bottom side that's laying flat against the table. So stand your stuff on an edge. I'll use this as an example. After you've cut it, leave it on its edge like that, or you can sticker it if it's going to be a long time. Stickering simply means you've got little strips of wood. I used to cut mine in the shape of a triangle. I saw some really cool ones up in Ontario where they've got an even better way, so there's less contact between the sticker and the wood. But you stack them so that air can move around through them. Yeah. Always best to let your wood acclimate before you actually start building with it, particularly if it's not been in that environment that you're working for a very long period of time. Next.
Okay. We also have Patrick Tackett here.
Patty tack.
And
did I tell you he wants your number one?
yeah, he
So why don't
asked.
you just show him your
He
number
asked
one?
where his was, and Super Dave informed him that they put it on a moose and sent it his way.
So Patty tack, this is a number one. This is an original Stanley number one. Now there's all kinds of stories as to what this was for. The one I believe most is that it was a salesman's sample. It fully functional. In fact, I'll even show you how functional it is. It's a dangerous place. Here we have a piece of aspen.
I hope he's feeling the pain right now.
What?
I hope he's feeling the pain of this.
He's hijacked this question. All right. So now, number ones never had a lateral adjustment lever. They have an advance and retract and adjuster knob, but they never had a lateral adjustment lever. So you had to move it by hand or with a little brass hammer.
That's about as thin as Super Dave gets it.
I think I actually sharpened this up for one of my kids to use, but it's too small to be used as anything much more than I wouldn't even call it a good block plane. So there you go. And is it being sent to you? The answer is no. But you can get your own because Wood River actually makes a number one, which I was quite impressed with. I think it's actually better machined than that original Stanley. By the way, those These usually retail, if they're in good shape, for somewhere around $2,000. The original Stanley number ones. A little on the rare side. You can find one if you want it really bad. Next.
Michaela Cosman would like to know your skin.
Wait a minute. Wait, I'm sorry. Did we have a question we were going to answer, and then Megan had somebody that she wanted me to say hi to?
No,
Oh, well, I still have more vets.
That was the.
Okay. Well, hold on. Hold.
Oh yeah,
hold,
we did.
Michaela.
We did. The 1 inch by 4 inch by 18 inch. Oh no, you did. You
We
answered
talked
that one.
about that.
This, yeah, so we have a new question.
Okay. Well, then hold on. She's got some more names. Go ahead.
Okay, so Sean McDermott,
Sean and
Ebby,
Angela. Pardon.
Ebby,
Abby. In where in Utah? Orem. Where's Abby live?
I thought it was northern.
No. He's just outside of Salt Lake. I thought he was in Orem.
That's what I meant by northern.
Yeah.
Marshall Rommel.
Rommel.
Ramel.
I
I'm terrible at
always
names.
said, if you want your kid to grow up and be in the military, you name him Marshall Rommel. And I can't mention Marshall's name. Actually, the Patty Tack, I'm sorry, did you, Philip hasn't on, it was Patrick. Patty Tack does not have his dovetail on my
Philip
wall
Lawrence
yet.
is on.
But, who does?
Philip Lawrence is on.
Philip, no, this was the original Philip Gustafson from the first class.
He's here too.
Oh, Philip is?
I think so. Thought I saw him.
Anyway, this is Marshall's dovetail. Incredible dovetail in the first class we taught, and that's Philip Gustafson's. Jake will zoom in there and show you. So good to see you, gentlemen. Glad you're here.
And then one more, we have Brandon Veach that's coming to the classes this year. That's
Hey,
on.
Brandon, which class? We don't know? Let's hope. Let's hope. Okay, back to questions.
Michaela Cosman wants to know your skincare routine. I'm just kidding.
Of course she does. She's jealous.
Okay, so this question comes from the chat. It's from Terrence Voth. And he says, hey, Rob, with all the drawers you have shown during the drawer making episodes, it is obvious you are not a fan of drawer slips, or your technique does not require them. Please explain.
Drawer slips.
Good chance to
So
advertise the online workshop, too.
So here's a drawer slip. If you have a drawer that is going to get high use, kitchen cabinets would be a good example. You think about how many times my kids would open the kitchen drawer. It would be measured in the hundreds per day. That's a lot of wear. Now, if drawers are built properly, according to me, it's a box fitting into a hole. And the tolerances should be such that there's no side-to-side movement. So that means that the weight of the drawer is running on the edge of the drawer side, and it's running right here. Well, if you've ever seen a piece of antique furniture that was properly built that way, it eventually will cut grooves in here. You think of how many times that has to run back and forth to do that, but it'll cut grooves in there and it'll sag a little bit. So drawer slips are a way of increasing the surface area, the running surface area, without increasing substantially the weight of the drawer. If you had big wide drawer sides, yes, you'd have more surface area, but think of how clumsy and clunky that would be. So instead, mine are two-tone, the outside's aspen, and the drawer slip is actually made out of mahogany. So this piece, you can see, is glued on, and then the groove for the drawer bottom is cut in it. And you see it, you can do all kinds of treatment here. You can cut a little fillet in there so it's easier to get dust out of, but whatever. The whole idea is to increase the running surface area without increasing the weight of the drawer. And I don't use them a ton. It's a fair bit of extra work. I do it once in a while, as obvious by this piece. But I like them. It's very much an English tradition, I would say. And what more can we say to that? Next.
Okay. Next one comes from Adam in Grimsby, Ontario. Can you square up the plane blade without the help from a Tormex-style grinder? I'm trying to solve the plane blade camber closer to center.
Absolutely. So we'll talk about squaring up plane blades. So I always advocate developing the skill. If you're relying on a jig to cut your dovetails or to sharpen your plane blade, you're not developing a skill. You're simply the motor that's making that particular tool work. If that jig breaks, you're no farther down the road of learning how to sharpen than you were when you started, and you got to go buy another jig. Why not just learn the skill? Well, all right, same thing with a grinder. And if you're totally hand tools, not interested in power tools, I would submit you might want to consider bending that a little bit and getting a grinder, because this will work so much faster than trying to, as you question was, squaring up the edge of a blade. This will remove such a small amount of metal. This will remove a large amount quickly. But there's a couple of things that you have to see that are going to make this job even easier. So, let me grab a blade from any number of my extra blades. So if my blade was out of square, and that sometimes happens, especially when you're learning freehand, remember, as I said, you put more pressure, you tend to put more pressure with your index finger than your pinky, so sometimes that happens. So what I have set up here, and Jake, how are we? We're well stocked on these and these, right? Okay, so you're in luck. The grinder, brand does not matter. This is a variable speed. I could care less. They typically come, if they're not variable speed, they either come at 1725 RPM or 3450. Get either one, doesn't matter. What you want, and what the most important part of it is right here and right here. The inexpensive grinders come with really cheap tool rests. So what you need to do is just throw that away and buy one of these. This is a Wolverine grinding jig. We have one way actually package them for us so that it's just, that's all you're getting, is this thing right here called the base plate and this thing called the platform assembly. And mine's clamped on because I needed to make a new one. But that, you can see how much grinding we do. That's just bolted or screwed to the same table that the bench grinder is. So it'll fit any bench grinder. Now you may have to go in and block this up if it needs to be a little higher, or you may have to block this up, whatever, but it'll fit. You can modify it to fit any grinder. It's nice because everything works on a cam, so you just squeeze it like that and it fits, or it's tight. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosen this. I really like this platform assembly because it's a nice, big, thick hunk of steel. It gives you lots of surface area, acts as a great heat sink, and solid as a rock. So first thing I would do is go in here and I would get this tool rest so it's supporting the blade or presenting the blade to the stone at 25 degrees, which in this case is my primary bevel. And I want it close, I want it well supported. I'm going to lock that down. Now I'm going to assume that that is angled on there is already 25 degrees, so I'm just going to match it. I got to turn that light on, Jake, because I got to be able to see. Okay, it needs to come up higher. And then this just lifts out and rotates so you can keep it out of your way. Now, I moved it away too far, so I'm going to bring it in. Is Chris too far on tonight? But Dave, Super Dave is?
Yep.
He doesn't get shout-outs anymore.
He's become like the furniture. Okay. Now, I can't see because I'm looking right into that light, which is kind of a dumb move. I'm just going to spin that and see if I can't see where it's making contact. Up high, so I need to move this a little bit more. Lock it. Keep it in there nice and tight. Oh, come on.
Well, every time you pull it in, you change the angle.
First time I've done this. A little bit more. Tried to come up with a way of doing this where you could set it, but there are so many variables, especially when it comes to chisels, that it's difficult to do. Yeah, it'll work. Okay, before I turn it on, this is a CBN wheel. Now there's so many advantages that you have to ignore the price because the advantages far outweigh the fact that it costs so much more than a regular wheel. As soon as you put it on, it's already balanced, so you don't have to go in there and keep switching it around and trying to get the wheel to run true. Never needs to be dressed. Doesn't need to be balanced. Has grit on on 3 surfaces, here, here, and out here. If you want to have access to a flat grind, you can use that as well typically right now I'm just going to use this surface. It has an 80 grit wheel, 80 grit abrasive, so it cuts very fast. The single biggest advantage, because it's a big hunk of steel, in fact, I'll show it to you. It weighs, what do we guess?
8 pounds.
8 pounds. It's a big hunk of steel. So it acts as a heat sink. So when you're grinding, that heat has to go somewhere. A lot of it goes off in the sparks, a lot of it goes into the blade, but in this case, a lot of it goes into the wheel, and it makes it so that this does not overheat. You can do it if you're not careful, but it's pretty easy. So I would turn that on. Now, I'm trying to bring this back to being square, so it only makes sense to have a square in my hand. I'll look and see if I picked one that isn't. No, that one is. But if it wasn't, I would go in. If I was high over here, in other words, it was sloped like this, then I would go in and I would just lightly, that's the key, lightly work that corner. It's a lot easier to see what's going on when you look over on this side. I got to back that off just a little bit. That's better. So I would just keep working that corner, and when I do this, instead of trying to move across here and you end up hitting that side, as I'm moving across, once I get into the wheel somewhere, then I start to move in, and before I exit out here, I pull away so that I'm engaging, disengaging, engaging, disengaging. But I don't pull it way down here each time. It takes a lot of extra time. So you're just working back and forth. Keep track over here. So you see how you can see that line. It's really easy to tell. And I'm low here, high here. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to work this area. I'm going to avoid this area. Now I keep turning it over and checking my progress. And if you need to, get your square on there and see what's going on. Looks to be pretty close, still a little bit low out here. So I would continue to go in there and avoid that corner. Now, if I'm really bad, meaning it's out by a lot, then what I would do, I would readjust my tool rest so it was almost straight on, and I would go in and I would purposely reshape the edge until it was square. Why do I say that? Because if it's really badly out of square and you're trying to reshape it doing this, you're going to eventually be working with just a feather edge, and that's easy to burn. I find it easier to go in and shape it by blunting the end of the blade until you get it squared up. Again, you're just going to put your square on there and check. Once you get it square, readjust your tool rest and go back in and now just drop it down until you bring this back to being a point. But if there's one example in my shop of where the equipment makes a huge difference, I can't think of too many areas more so than the grinder. If you use a traditional wheel, it takes forever. It's constantly overheating. The pain of putting the wheel on there so it doesn't vibrate is a nightmare I choose not to have to go through again. And that's a little bit, how expensive is that? How much is the wheel?
$180.
So it's $180 for the wheel, and it's $70 for the tool rest.
What grit is that?
80 grit. And for the next 5 to 7 years, you won't have to worry about fearing using the grinder. It makes the job so much easier.
And
One of
for
the best finds we made in the last 5 years in terms of improving performance of our equipment in here. And as we grind a lot. Jake does all of the 17-degree chisels, all the half-blind dovetail chisels. Anything else we do?
All of our cutters.
And all the cutters, yeah. So we do a lot of grinding. Okay, next, Frick.
All right, this one comes from the chat, and it is from...
How are we for numbers, by the way?
I have 786 on YouTube,
Okay.
and 5 on Facebook.
5. Welcome, Facebook.
Killing it.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a question about the Cosman workbench from the new video,
Yeah.
and it's from Brian Proffer, and he says,
Hey, Brian. I know Brian.
I have my 1-inch MDF for my Cosman workbench cut but not glued yet. I was cleaning out the garage and had to move it outside for a few hours in the sun, and the piece on top bowed/warped. Is there any ways to fix?
The top piece of MDF did. Wow. Well, number one, my first thought is, okay, it's not worth risking your bench because of one piece of MDF. But before I toss it out, I would bring it back into the garage, and I would set it on its edge somewhere and see what happens over the course of the next couple of days. The old trick was lay it down on a concrete floor where it'll absorb a bit of moisture. So if it cupped like this, right? So if my board, yeah, this is a good one, it's flexible. If my piece of wood or MDF were to cup like that, that means this side is taking on more moisture than that side, because as the surface has grabbed moisture here and has caused it to swell, its only option is to bend and expand. The underside, the opposite. So if you took a piece of MDF that has cupped like that and laid it down on a concrete floor, then the bottom is going to absorb some moisture out of the concrete, and that may bring it back around to being flat. It's the only thing I can tell you there. And if it doesn't straighten out in the next couple of days, then kiss it goodbye and go get yourself another piece. Not worth trying to work with something like that.
Your wife is on.
Hello, wife. Kimberly. Yes? Rick?
All right, ready?
Yeah.
Next one comes from Mike in San Diego. He wants to know if you have more shooting boards or drill presses.
If I had more shooting board,
which do you have more of? Shooting boards or drill presses?
Drill presses. Yeah.
Oh, by far.
We
We have more drill presses than we have shooting boards
I have
included
more
in
drill
our
presses than I
inventory.
have children.
That's
Shooting
measurement
boards, I
right
have
there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 active shooting boards right now. Oh, no, that's not true either. There's 2 more over there. 7 shooting boards, and we probably have 14 drill presses. I can stand here and see 1, 2, 3,
That's it.
4. And then out there we'd have 5,
19 or so.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, we actually may be down a few. We have to start buying some more. Next,
All right, Klaus from Germany, Berlin.
Klaus.
He wants to, hi, I just bought a Veritas dovetail saw and it binds in the wood. Any tips besides wax?
Yeah, my saw.
Next.
Yeah.
Not allowed to answer next.
You can. Alan Peters used to take, the secret to getting a really nice straight cut in a piece of wood with your dovetail saw is to have minimal set. And if the time came that he had too little set on there, what you can do is just run a little thing of magic wax along there and then just spread it with your fingers. I never really liked doing this because you're applying glue directly to the glue surface, and then that'll help. But if it's really binding, then obviously there's not enough set, and you need to put the set back on, and that involves. Oh, where's
I don't
mine?
think you have it there.
Huh? Here's one here. A saw set, where you go in, and there's an anvil. So there's the round part is the anvil. Now that anvil has. If you were to go all the way around that anvil, you see how the slope changes. So depending on how much set you want, you adjust it, then lock it in place. And when you set that down there, and when the blade touches here and here, it's at the right height. And then you're going in there, and that, as you squeeze the trigger, that pushes the tooth against the anvil to the right amount of bend. So, but the hard part is with doing a small saw like that is you got to go in and identify which tooth is going that way, which tooth is bent this way. I used to go in and put the headgear on so I can see, and with a little mark, touch every other one. It's a pain to do, and then you got to go in there, and it takes some work. But the answer I'd love to tell you, I'm biting my tongue on, so I'll limit myself to what I just said. Next.
We just reached our first $1,000 increment.
Okay, so we are drawing for at least one $100 gift certificate tonight. Frick? Frick?
I had a good question. Just a minute, where to go? All right, this one, oh, actually, no, this one comes from the chat,
Yeah.
and it is from Rob Switzer,
Hey, Rob.
and he wants to know if you can
Talk
talk.
to Rob.
You want
last
to show him
night.
his handle?
Oh, yeah, I sent him a picture.
Okay.
I hope I did. I took the picture. I bet I forgot to send it to him. Sorry, Rob. I'll do that tonight. I took the pictures on my phone. Go ahead. What do you want?
So he wants to know if you can talk about proper fleam, rake, etc. on your large tenon saw, and also how to properly sharpen a crosscut saw.
No.
No. No, I got to be set up for that. But I will address it. There is no fleam on my tenon saw. So my tenon saw, my dovetail saw, my medium tenon are rip teeth. And the teeth, what he's referring to is the face of the tooth. Give me the right file. The face of the tooth, when filed, that's too big of a file, is like this. So a fleam would mean that there'd be some angle on the face of the tooth, like on a crosscut. But on a rip saw, I don't put any, there's none whatsoever. It's 0 degrees. So 0 this way. What was the rest of that question?
Crosscut's not sharp.
And crosscut sharp. We'll do that eventually, but that's going to take a while. That would be another one of those 25-minute answers that might not go so well tonight.
Really quick question from Adrian.
Thank you, though. I will address that.
Really quick question from Adrian. He wants to know if your saws are push or pull saws.
Western style saws cut on the push. Eastern saws, Japanese saws cut on the pull. Why one over the other? And there's obviously debate on this. Well, a dovetail saw in hardwood, the dovetail saw was designed with a heavy brass back that was and is fairly close to the tooth line. So I don't know why you see dovetail saws, some of those short stubby ones, and the teeth are way down here. When you're ever going to cut dovetails in drawers are going to be any deeper than what you would allow right there. And the closer this is to this, the more stout that blade is going to be. The idea is you want that saw to hold its shape and to not follow the path of least resistance so that the surface comes out absolutely flat. Okay? Now, how do you test it? Well, you take the piece after it's been cut and you put it back on there, and you should have a perfect joint, whether it's this surface or you spin it around like that. Typically in a joint, you're going to have side of the tail, side of the pin, and you want a nice flat surface. Japanese saws, I don't even have one anymore to describe or show you, use a very thin blade. And that little thin blade, I love the philosophy that you can pull a blade of grass between your fingers, but you can't push it. However, on Western hardwoods, that little thin blade will want to follow the path of least resistance. So everyone says, oh, it's so much easier because you're pulling to start instead of pushing. Well, hear me out. In the process of doing that, you'll have a straight cut here, straight cut down here, but you look on the backside, and that little blade, like I said, has wandered to follow the path of least resistance. Sometimes they're curved, their blades down to 12/1000ths of an inch, whereas this is 20. On really light wood, that's fine, but on stout hardwoods, you need that solid brass back to help support that so that that cut comes out with a perfectly flat surface. So Western style, Western hardwoods, cut on the push. And it's not, by the way, it's not hard. That's the reason why on my dovetail saw, I put those little tiny starter teeth. In fact, I have them on my big tenon saw, I have them on the medium tenon saw, all of them have the same feature. The little tiny teeth with a relaxed cutting face, so you can go in there, do that just to start the cut, and then that provides a track, so when you follow up with the big teeth, they hold on course, and you get a nice, fast, accurate, and most importantly, straight cut. Good question. Next.
All right, I think we'll do one more, and then we'll try and bring
Ray?
Ray on.
Oh, it's time.
But this question comes from Roy Wilson in Nanaimo, BC.
All right.
What are the most important tools to start making small boxes?
I'm assuming you're talking hand tools. So, boy, most important tools to start making small boxes. Well, I would have to say your number one is going to be over here. You got to have good stones because nothing else works without it. So I would say your sharpening gear. I would always advocate a 5.5 because it works so well on a shooting board, which if your 5.5 is number 2, your shooting board is number 3. You need some chisels. And if you're doing small boxes, you could probably get away with just 1.25. However, the one thing they can't do is what you can do with an 1/8 inch, which will be ready soon, as Jake says so. So those 3 chisels. If you're going to cut dovetails, then you need your dovetail saw. You need at least 1 marking gauge.
No, you need 2.
All right, Jake says 2. You need
If
2
you
marking.
if you tell them they need 2,
You need 2 marking gauge. Actually, I tell you, you need 3.
okay. Well, why not 4?
All right, and I only got 3 here. So marking gauges. Then you need
Mallet.
your small measuring tools. You need. I like that little 6-inch combination square. I used to travel with that as a means of doing a lot. You need your fret saw for your dovetailing. You're going to need a mallet. If you're doing small stuff, I like my little tiny mallet when finesse is the key as opposed to
Skew block.
power. The Lee Nelson skew block plane is great if you're going to, actually it's great for a lot of things, but
Drawer bottom plane.
yeah, if you're going to cut grooves to house the bottom on your small box, and again, you're not doing power tools, then you're going to need this. This will go in and allow you to cut a groove to house that bottom. Such a fun tool to use, so quiet, peaceful. And I just jammed it up. Twice. And how come that one doesn't have an opening? It needs it. What else, Jake? Small boxes.
We have Ray ready whenever.
Okay.
I think that would cover. I mean, there's little stuff
that would
like
get
dividers.
started. And yeah, well, true. You're going to use your dovetail marking knife if you want to make accurate dovetails.
I mean, if he's talking about a wood hinge box, then he wants
Dovetail marker, pallet, dividers. Wow.
But if he's talking wood hinge, he'd also need the kit.
Yeah, yeah. Ask that question again on the chat and be more specific. Are you talking specifically about hand tools? Are you talking about dovetailing these small boxes? And I'll try to address that better. In the meantime, while you're doing that, we're going to introduce Ray Dorr. Ray is a combat wounded vet from Vietnam era that lives in Louisiana. He came to our class. He was an absolute delight to have. I consider Ray a good friend. And I'm going to let Ray take it over. It's all you, Ray. Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, Rob. And all your viewing people. I came to Rob's class. First, I need to thank Rob and his family. His family supports him considerably. We flew into Bangor, Maine, and Rob, his wife, and his youngest daughter, Colonel Luther, they all drove down. I think it's about a 90-mile drive from his place down to Bangor, and then 90 miles back, and came pick up me and Pete, Ebby, and another serviceman. I don't remember his name now. But what Rob does is truly amazing.
What you did was amazing, Ray. We're just We're just trying to say thank you.
No, I was just a little mule driver.
Can you tell the story about driving the mule over the hill?
Yeah, when I
First of all, you
first,
gotta tell them what a mule is.
a mule's a flat vehicle with a cage on the front with the steering wheel and the clutch and brake, and it has low pressure tires on it, no suspension.
How long would it be?
It's like a sheet of plywood, a little bit bigger, probably like a sheet of MDF, maybe a little bit bigger, I guess.
But
With a rear engine.
One person driver.
One person driver, right. And when I first got to Vietnam, me and another little fellow named Gunny Sladen me and another little fellow named Bert Lancaster, Gunny Sladen's personal working party. He had us hauling trash and water and stuff, which was really good for my first 2 or 3 weeks in Vietnam. And we were at Cam Lo Bridge, and part of our company was at Cam Lo Bridge, which was a watering site, and the rest of it was at Cam Lo Hill. So one day, Gunny Sladen told me to go up to the hill and get something. I don't remember what it was. And being a newbie, I got on the mule and I started driving to the hill, and I meet the mine sweepers coming down the road, clearing the road between the hill and the bridge. And I was like, "Hey, fellas, just stay in my tracks. It's clear back that way." Realizing that I could have gotten hurt. I could have hit a mine that Charlie might have placed in the road, instead of waiting for the mine sweepers. So I learned, and after that, waited for the mine sweepers. But when I wasn't driving the mule, I was the mule. Because being in a mortar squad in an infantry team in the Marine Corps, you carried a lot of weight. So I didn't do anything special. I lived on the ground for 13 months. I did what I signed up for. Training is a lot more fun, the actual application of it. But
you survived.
I didn't think we did anything special. But Rob does a lot special. His family supports him. There's a lot of organizations that do things for servicemen. Not very many individuals that do what Rob does, hands-on. Brings you up there. Naturally, you're going to come home with products, but he's going to give you something. He's going to give you some skills that you can go home and get lost in and forget things going around. With this COVID thing going on and having a social distance, I've told my wife, I said, socially distancing is not really too hard for me. I go to my shop, play in my shop 6, 7, 8 hours, come home, and I do that all the time, and I'm comfortable. And I'm out there trying to do the things I learned. And I started woodworking a long, long time ago. And I have a friend that we were in Nam together, and I'm trying to get him to go take your class. He's had some medical issues, and he's improving from that, and hopefully he'll be able to go and take your class once this has gotten past him. And we went to a reunion one year, and I'm running around looking for lumber yards. This was in San Antonio, and he was like, "Let's go drink some beer," and he's, "What you want to do with this wood?" And then many years later, he discovered what I discovered a long time ago, what Rob is trying to give us. And can't thank you enough, Rob.
Well, Ray, you keep saying me, but a lot of the folks that are listening to you are the ones that are making this possible. If you think of the effort that Colonel Luther puts in, and Jake, and Megan, and Frick, and Rex,
Certainly.
and
Certainly.
Super Dave, these guys, it's a
Certainly.
big effort. I just happen to have my name on the front because it grew out
Yeah.
of my own business, but there are so many people that are contributing.
Yes. and
But I
that's what
wanted them to
said
hear
at the
directly.
beginning.
I wanted them to hear directly from you what it did for you, so that they will be confident to tell the people that they know who are suffering that this just might be the solution to help
Oh.
control what's in your head.
It is. And I learned that, like I'm saying, I started woodworking many years ago. And as a hobby, and I studied the people that you talk about. I studied Tay Frid and Klaus and a lot of those people. I studied this. After I retired a few years ago, my woodworking started to wane some, and I discovered you on YouTube just a few months before. I enrolled to go to your class, and thankfully it's reignited. What I discovered years ago, and I thank you.
You're welcome, Ray. We appreciate what you did. I'm glad it's helped you, and I hope that you're able to help somebody else, point them in our direction so that we can do more of this.
I'm trying.
You know that. Ray?
And if there's veterans out there listening to this and are skeptical, don't be. You've been through boot camp. You've been through worse. Rob's little week of boot camp is nothing. And you'll have fun. You'll laugh. Your allergies may act up a little bit, but you'll have a good time.
How are your dovetails?
I haven't really cut any dovetails since I've left, and thankfully you started the brigade for the workbenches. You do need a workbench. I have a cheap little Harbor Freight workbench, and I've tried doing it on that, and it does.
Are you on the list, Ray?
Yes, I am.
Good.
Yeah, I could be getting one soon.
Good.
He was just waiting on the
Devices.
vices, right?
Yep.
Right.
Well, this will make a huge impact. So I expect
Oh, yeah.
to see a good dovetail within the next month.
yeah. And I have a project that I want to make for another Marine fellow that I worked with, whose brother passed, and I'm making a display for him, which he doesn't know. And naturally, I want to make it nice. I want to make it like one of your boxes with the hidden hinges and dovetailed. And I definitely have a nice project in mind.
Well, I'll expect pictures, Ray.
I'll send them.
All right. Thank you
Okay.
for doing this in such short notice.
Yeah. We had a birthday party for my 8-year-old granddaughter. First time I've seen her since the COVID thing
right.
started.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, things are easing up here, too.
Yeah. Good deal.
Thank you, Ray.
And everybody, what Rob does is very infectious. You can tell by the number of people signing up for the bench brigade. And, like Super Dave and other people that go and join him doing, I would like to do it one day. I need to wait until my wife is finally retired. But if you'll have me, I'd like to go up and help.
All right. I'll remember that.
Okay.
Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Jake just reminded me, this is to remind me to say this is June 6th, which is the anniversary of D-Day. And unfortunately, we've never had a World War II vet come to our class. Might be getting up there in years, but we've had guys that were almost that old. Anyway, remember that.
Did Len?
What?
Len Robinson. I don't think he was in any of those battles.
He fought his way all the way across Europe. Okay, next question, Frick. Did we get clarification on that question about what tools to make boxes?
He did mean hand tools.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. All right, quick question from Mark Wheeler in Kansas City.
Hey, Mark.
What is the mat you have under your sharpening stones, and where did you get it?
Oh, what is that, Jake? Is that piece of rubber?
I think
Yeah.
Luther
Oh, no.
explained it. It's for pet bulls, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it?
I'm not a big fan of it.
No,
No.
just something. What I do is when I build my sharpening station, we always slope it. We always slope it so it's a couple of degrees, so that the runoff will stay off of my bench, but the spray gets on it. So I took a piece of rubber that's underneath here, a piece of rubber, and it goes right up underneath, just to try to protect it. But it's messy business. Next.
All right, this next one comes from Dennis Pieniezik from Chicago.
Hey, Dennis in Chicago.
He wants to know how you determine the hang for your saws.
Oh, so the hang, if you don't understand that terminology, the hang is the angle between where you're holding it and it's the angle of the handle to the saw. And that happened 12 years ago. So
Yeah, what was that formula that you used?
what was that formula that I used?
Super Dave was the one that it was like
Yes, Dave
something
Dave worked
square.
on that to improve it. Maybe Dave could speak up and address it. In the meantime, I remember playing around with it and just trying to find something that was going to be comfortable. Now, I will say this. I don't think it's nearly as big a deal as some might make it out to be. I think I could cut a dovetail with any variations of that. It could be 3 or 4 degrees in either direction. I don't think I would ever even really notice. So I wouldn't call myself a fan of that being a critical factor in choosing a saw or using a saw. So it was just more or less a comfort thing. So if you're holding it, the most natural position, if that's in my hand like that, and I'm cutting dovetails at that height, I suppose, if anything, I'd want that to be parallel to the bench top, is it?
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
It is a little up.
Well, that's to protect from going too low on the backside.
Now,
How's that?
you do need to determine the hang on your next saw.
Yeah, I actually going to play around with that a little bit. So this is our baby dovetail saw that's in the works. This is for doing really small work, and this is going to have a very thin blade, 15 thou. And I do think that's out a little too high. But I'm going to put my finger recesses back in. I'm going to play around with that a little bit. So actually the handle's thinner as well. Quite a few changes. But as I said, that is going to be specifically for cutting little tiny drawers that we did on some of the furniture pieces that you've seen us do in the last 11 years, or however long we've been doing this. Next.
All right, this one comes from the chat, and it's from Carlos Cawthon.
Carlos?
He wants to know how you suggest sharpening for someone with back problems. I know you are fairly adamant about bending over, but it's not easy.
Yeah, well, we do have that occasionally.
Well, you just, instead of leaning over,
Well, but there are
Have
some
it
people
set
that
at a
cannot
height.
lean. Now, I'll tell you a couple of things. You can spread your legs so that you can drop your height down without having to move your back, bend your back. The problem with trying to sharpen at bench height is you're pivoting from your wrist. And I always found that when freehand sharpening, the farther away you could get the pivot point, meaning moving it from your wrist to your shoulder, it was much easier to maintain those angles. So I would try maybe bringing this up a little bit and just spreading your legs so that you can lower your height without having to necessarily bend over. Trying to think if we've addressed anybody else with that issue. Number one, make sure you have stones that cut really fast so it limits the amount of time that you have to be bent over if you can do it at all. And if you can't, I'm not saying it's the end of the world if you have to use a jig.
But why can't you just raise it up until it's at a comfortable height?
Well, yeah, you can play around with all of those things.
I mean, it doesn't have to be sitting on their bench, but it could be just at the end of their arm's reach.
Yeah, you can actually use the angle trainer. You could use the angle trainer to support it too, but I mean, that's really not a long-term solution. I'd have to think about that. Almost would have to have the person with the problem there so that we could address it, because they're going to be taller, shorter, whatever. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all on that. And when we do have people come to the class, Luther's friend Mike had lost a hand when he was a kid with an M80. So he just had a hook, and we played around a little bit to help him get to the point where he held the blade with one hand, and he just used his hook against the hand at the wrist point, I think, just to kind of help stabilize it. So individual answer for that question, and I'm sorry that I can't give you any more than that, but if you were here, we'd help you. Here's an invitation.
Paul's on.
Paul from Australia.
Yeah, so is Danny.
Hey, Paul. Danny Bell. Danny Bell. Danny doesn't even need a last name anymore. He's like Cher.
And we have a couple people on that are
Not
coming
really like
to the
Cher.
class. John Beck.
John coming to the class in the summer. Hey, John. Keep your fingers crossed, brother.
And Ferris
Bueller.
Butler, yeah.
What we call him, Bueller.
Yeah.
Ferris. Talked to him not long ago.
Also, are you done?
Yeah, go on. There's one more. I'm trying to find his name.
Super Dave told me that we had our second Aussie vet apply ever.
Yeah, for next spring.
Yeah,
Really?
and he's actually on the live.
Oh, is he
his
good?
name's
What's his
Tony.
name? Tony?
Yeah.
What's the only name they have down there? That's great. Does he know Ash?
I don't know.
Did he come because of Ash? I'd like to know that.
That I don't know.
Let us know, please. Okay.
My intel source is pretty lame.
Yeah, Intel's not that great. Faulty Intel coming through upstate New York.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
always talking about us and our moose.
Frick, question?
Yep. All right. So this one also comes from the chat. It's from Aaron Fenn. How would you recommend cutting dovetails on an arc, as in around an edge or part of a circle?
Kind of like we do it on our. Can you grab that, Rex? It's way up there. I'm going to pause that question until Rex comes back. So go on to the next one.
Okay. This one comes from Brian Proffer in Bakersfield, California. He wants to know, when should you use veneer over MDF for a desk or tabletop as opposed to using solid wood?
Well. I've done both. Alan Peters would always use veneer to save timber. And the example there is if you have a nice big slab of beautiful bird's eye maple, well, you're using 1.5 inches and you're seeing the surface. That could be sliced into veneer, and you can make 2 houses full of furniture benefiting from that same beautiful piece of wood. So there's that consideration. Of course, stability is a big deal. MDF is such a beautiful substrate because there are no voids. If you use plywood is several layers of wood that are glued in opposing directions, and sometimes there's voids underneath. Sometimes the wood will swell differently. I certainly would not put solid wood plywood as my #1 choice for a substrate in veneering applications. MDF always. In fact, I prefer MDF plywood over veneer core plywood. So I would say when stability is going to be the primary concern, and also when if you're using a solid top, then you have to allow for that expansion, and the wider it is, the more it's going to expand. So in any kind of an application where stability is the number one concern, that's when I would definitely say veneer over solid wood. But I built that big ash desk. I don't know where we have a picture of it. Actually, I know I have a picture right over here. I built a big ash desk. Gotta be careful how I say that, don't I? That was a big ash desk. And it couldn't be veneered because the very design of it was such that it required solid wood. There it is. So that was a big slab of ash with walnut on the sides, all dovetailed, and then the same process repeated down here in the base. And do I have any other? Yeah, same haircut. That's my wife's favorite picture of me. This top, not a desk, I understand. That is solid wood. This top is veneer over MDF, banded on all four sides, and then really pretty fiddleback ash veneer. That's all the pictures I have, where they're all gone. Anyway, okay, so round.
Before you get to that, Tony from Australia does not know Ash, but he plans on touching base with him soon.
Good, please do.
He's also near Paul.
Oh, yeah, have they got together? No. Oh, you guys need to connect. Both send me an email, and I'll put you in touch with each other.
They're communicating.
Oh, yeah, there, it's even better. Keep me out of it. Okay, so here's dovetails on the round. Now, see if I can address this. This could only really go together one way, right? So you couldn't slide this piece on this way. You could only bring this piece down on that way. So that meant the tails needed to be on this piece. And in terms of laying them out, the difficult part is that the grain is such that you end up with some real severe angles. So you still want your slope to identify it as a dovetail, but I can't. I wish I could tell you exactly how I did it, but I think by eye was more than anything else. So here, if you get too much slope this way, you got a lot of really short grain right up here on this top corner. I can get a pencil so I can point. So when you're on a slope like this, if I'd had you might think, well, maybe the dovetail should look more like that, but then that makes for some really short grain wood up there. So you have to mediate that by backing off on the angle. This is the only normal one up here where it's pretty much straight grained. So I could actually have a little more slope on that. So it's a little bit on the difficult side. I don't know what kind of a round application you're thinking of, but the one thing I would tell you is that you have to pay attention to the grain and don't avoid really short grain out there in the corners. That's why you can't undercut too much in those applications. Okay, next.
From the chat, username is TheLordSeth1. What teachers do you consider the best when you started?
Oh. Well, I'll tie this into what books I think were the best. I think Alan Peters was my mentor, and what I appreciated most about Alan was his level of precision. That he just did things perfectly. I mean, I was well into my career when I went over and examined some of his furniture in 2005, and with a trained eye, I couldn't find any flaws. I couldn't find anything that I could say, oh, wow, you kind of scrimped there. No, it was perfect. I don't know how you make money doing that, because if you've watched me build this thing, and you've seen how fussy we've been, my goodness, can you imagine if you were trying to actually sell that? $100,000 by the time it was done. Nobody's going to pay you that much. So Alan Peters. Now I also worked as Alan's assistant in the summer of '87, and Alan wasn't the greatest in terms of expressing himself and teaching. He more or less would do it, and then you kind of had to follow along. So there's the ability to do, and there's the ability to teach, and there's the ability to do and teach. And that's a rare combination. Tay Frid I thought he was a great guy. And his books, Tay wrote 3 books, published by Tenon. One was on finishing, one was on joinery, and one was on veneering. And easy to read books. As far as a teacher, his accent was strong enough, thick enough that it was difficult to understand a lot of what he was saying. I was around him for 2 weeks before I understood it, so the people who were taking a 1-week class, I'm sure the first 3 or 4 days they didn't know what he was talking about. But very knowledgeable.
Where was Tage from?
Tay, he was a Great Dane, but I don't know what year he migrated into the United States. I think it would have been in the 50s. Ian Kirby. I think Ian Kirby was he's still alive. I think Ian Kirby is a great craftsman and a great instructor. And Ian wrote a series of books, never did finish it, back in the 80s. And I have 2 of them. He had planned to do a whole series on them. Something happened. But I think those 2 books were some of the best on the topic. One was called Down to a Line, and it was all about sawing and planing and planing and whatever else. I can't remember the title of the other one, but if you can find any of Ian Kirby's books, I think Ian is an impeccable craftsman and a really good teacher. Dale Nish. Dale was my mentor. Dale was a great craftsman and a great instructor. He wasn't terribly patient with people who didn't care, put it that way. If you really strove to do your very best, then Dale would have been the greatest instructor you ever met. If you were the one that just wanted to get it done, you did not want to be taught by Dale, because he was harsh in that way. So, who else can I mention in there? Great craftsman. Sam Maloof was a wonderful human being who just treated everybody wonderfully, and was a great craftsman and a great instructor, and just all around made you feel great. So I've known quite a few really good ones.
What about Monroe?
Monroe Robinson. Monroe Robinson, I thought, was a very great craftsman, impeccable craftsman, and a really good guy. I really like Monroe. Oh, am I forgetting anyone? Those would be some of the most influential on me, the ones that actually changed or made me change my direction to follow a path of do it right and don't settle for anything less. Not great business advice if you're trying to do this for a living, because most people could care less.
Probably should have been mentioned right in the pack with the rest of them, but David Benson.
Oh, well, Super David Benson is the king of the bunch. I mean, there's nobody better.
He literally just texted me and said, I think he forgot Super David.
Yes, sir. He epitomizes unfine woodworking. Just until you see a chicken coop built like that, you haven't seen a chicken coop. Next, please get us off this topic.
Well, just really quickly, as part of this topic, Brian Tyler wanted to know if you ever built a Maloof rocking chair with Sam.
I did.
There was one. It was the last picture in that book. It's over there by the ladder.
I'll show you. So this is how this happened. I can't remember the year. I'm going to guess and say it was 1986. I was at BYU. Dale was on sabbatical that year, which I was ticked about, but I understand. And Ed Hinckley took over, and Ed got this idea that we all packed in a vehicle and we went to spend a weekend watching Sam Maloof build a rocking chair in Colorado. And when we came back, he put together a class. There was only 3 of us in the class. The class was to build a Maloof rocker. I chose to do mine out of Paducah. It's very intimidating when you start. But when you break it down and say, I mean, you look at that and think, oh my goodness, where would you start? But if you just said, well, let's just start with this piece. Well, that leg wouldn't be too hard to make. And then let's go to one of these back pieces, and let's do that upper crest rail on the back. And let's do that. So when you did it like that, it was doable. Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Not my style. I'm not the sculpture type. but it was fun to do, and really appreciated the work that he put into it. And yeah, it was nice. I still have that. My kids dropped it, knocked it over, and broke the arm. So it's.
I think that one's made of walnut.
No, Jake. Challenging my memory. It's made out of Paduke.
Challenging your
It's sitting
memory?
in my parents' living room until, actually, it's pretty much time we can bring it home. I don't think Chloe's going to destroy anything.
All right, question from Brandon in the chat. Question for a humid South Florida. My shop is not air conditioned and extremely humid. Could I use a dehumidifier to reduce my sweating without
My sweating?
causing the wood to shift? I'm assuming he's talking about the wood, not him. Without the wood to shift after it leaves my shop.
Oh, wow. That's a real challenge. You know, we're working with this live, well, somebody will beat me up on that. We're working with this material that is always in search of equilibrium with the surrounding atmosphere. In a low pressure system comes in, this is going to absorb moisture and swell and get wider. And a high pressure system comes in and it gets dry, this is going to give off that moisture and it's going to shrink and get thinner. So you build something in Florida, which most of the year is hot and humid, and you ship it to somebody in Arizona, oh, what's going to happen? I've done that over the years, way back when. I'm glad I don't do it anymore. And I remember when we brought furniture. I lived in Utah for 5 years, from 1985 to 1989. And I had made a lot of furniture. My wife insisted that I stop selling it so we'd have something to bring home. I brought a lot of furniture home, and I moved from a very dry, high plain desert into the coast of Atlantic Canada. And that furniture, some of the stuff just went nuts. And I remember refitting drawers 3 or 4 times over the course of a couple of years before they finally stopped swelling on me to the point where you couldn't open them. So you're talking about a huge challenge, huge. As far as you're always in an ideal situation to keep your workshop environment the same as wherever this is going to go. So if you're working in an uncontrolled garage and then you're going to bring that stuff into your house, wow. All I can say is good luck. Just expect everything to shrink or expand depending on where it's going. If I had the magic bullet for that, I'd be writing and replacing Bruce Hoadley's book on understanding wood. Read that one, then maybe you can answer the question for us. By the way, that's a good book to have too. Bruce Hoadley wrote a book, Understanding Wood. And you have to have as good understanding of this material as possible before you can adequately and effectively build with it. Good example. I wish I could tell you more, but there is no magic bullet to that. Oh, hey, you know what? There is. Try working with torrefied wood. Torrefied wood is not supposed to absorb moisture, and you can buy it in most species. Get a hold of Mel, my friend, at Exotic Woods in Burlington, Ontario. Tell him you want some torrefied wood. I'll show you quickly show you a piece. Here's a piece of maple. This is a piece of maple that has been torrefied. So what they do is they put this in an oven, and they raise the temperature to a point where if there was oxygen present, it would burn. But because there was no oxygen, it doesn't. And my understanding is that, according to Mel, this was a technique developed by the, I was going to say Aztecs. Vikings, to prevent wood from rotting. Well, how does wood rot? It has to involve moisture. So if you somehow manage to come up with a way of limiting or removing wood's ability to absorb moisture, then would it rot? The answer is no. It also doesn't expand. So my first experience with this, Mel was telling me about it, and I said, Mel, you mean to tell me that you have never cut or ripped a piece of torrefied wood and had it close in on the blade? And he said, never. And I said, wow. So I bought some, brought it home, and the piece I think was 6 inches wide, and I only needed 5/8 of an inch, and it was closer to 7/8. So I took the board on its edge, ran it over the table saw, flipped it around like this, and finished the cut. And the 1/8 inch piece left over went like that, fell flat on the bench, and for several months afterwards, I kept it around. It never moved. It never cupped. And if you've ever done that with a piece of wood, you know how prone it is to cupping. I was quite impressed. So now we make all of our winding sticks.
Which we don't have that. Oh, right there.
We make all of our winding sticks out of torrefied maple for that very reason. If they don't absorb moisture, then they don't move. And winding sticks made out of any wood are subject to being moving and having to be trued all the time, but these have stayed true. So that's torrefied maple. And they are for sale on our site. So try that. Try getting yourself some, a hold of some torrefied wood. I've seen torrefied maple. I've seen torrefied ash. Anything else? That's not any kind of a stain. That's all the way through the wood. That's a piece of maple. Now the only downside to it is it weakens the wood slightly, but I wouldn't say it weakens it a lot. I would not call it detrimental. At some point in the near future, I want to make a set of drawers and using the torrefied stuff to really put it to the test. Because wouldn't it be great if your drawer sides did not move? Next.
Okay, this next question comes from Mark Menke from Ohio.
Hi, Mark. That name sounds very familiar.
How is a concave spokeshave sharpened?
How is a concave? Okay, he needs to tell me whether I think he's talking about this. So this is a concave spokeshave. Oh, I don't use this a ton, but how would I tackle that? Well, very similar to sharpening blades out of molding planes. You're better off just to go in and keep honing the flat face instead of going in and changing this. But if that was dull and needed to be sharpened, the first thing I would do is go in. I would hone that face so it was nice and smooth. And if I had to go in here and address this bevel, I would put a micro bevel on there. I would use a slipstone, which is just a very, which tends to be a round or a radius stone, and I would go in there and I would just address that ever so slightly. Or what you can do is take some really fine sandpaper. You can get sandpaper up to 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 grit, and wrap it around a dowel and use that to go in there and just address that. You don't want to change the angle too much. You want to stay close to this, but you don't want to lay right on the bevel because then you're working way too much material. So by raising it up just slightly, and I would start at the top and I would just work my way through, putting a little micro bevel on there. You can verify it with the burr on the back side. As soon as you get it, knock off the burr and away you go. That's pretty sharp. I've only used this once or twice. Next.
All right. This comes from Paul Niaju from Queens, New York.
Hey, Paul.
He says, is the angle trainer specifically for use on plane blades, or can it also be used for chisels?
You can use it. I didn't develop it for chisels, but you can use it for a chisel. I just got done making 50 angle trainers, but I don't have any of them right here, but I have an old one kicking around, don't we, Jake? Wasn't there one made out of that gray? Here it is right here. So the angle trainer, these guys don't realize what big favors they do us by asking questions like that. The angle trainer is designed to help you develop the ability to sharpen freehand, but plain blade primarily. However, we could do a chisel. So it has two angles on it. One side has 29 degrees, and the other one has 31. Now the new ones we make are all made out of white or bone-colored swanstone, and with the label on there. And by the way, we just got new labels. The labels that we were using, they would wash off when they got wet. They weren't supposed to, but they did. But now we have ones that do not wash off. Rex, would you go do me a favor? Go grab one we just did, a new one, so I can show them. So what I would do, starting on the 29-degree side, and this is where it pays to use a little bit of dish detergent in your water. Set your angle trainer down on the 29-degree side. Lay your chisel down there, slide it forward until it makes contact, and then you can go in and you can address that secondary bevel, secondary bevel. This is helping you hold the angle. As soon as you can detect a burr on the back side, then you're going to do the same thing. Open it up for me just so I can see it. On your 16,000, well, now you're going to turn this around so you're a couple degrees higher. Move forward. Now you're sitting at 31 degrees. Go in there and do the same thing. 10 seconds or so, and then remove that. You're going to lay that flat, no ruler trick on the chisel. Get rid of any burr on the back side, and there you go. The whole process for doing a chisel, especially something that narrow, shouldn't be any more than 20 seconds. So here's the new ones that we just did. So there's the new labels, and they're waterproof so that it does not wear off. So there's your 29-degree side, there's your 31. Two really powerful magnets, one on either side, that'll help hold that. And like I said, the idea of that is not to give you a sharpening jig. It's there to help you develop the feel and the ability to be able to sharpen freehand. And it'll wear out. You're running this over an abrasive stone. This material is eventually going to wear out. It's only there long enough to get you to the point where you can do it without it. Okay, next. Megan, how many draws are we doing?
Just
One?
once.
Everybody taking a night off?
Well, we have a lot of people on now that weren't on earlier. We're up to 1,343.
Wow.
When you last really talked about it.
Okay, well, let me just, we'll keep going. So the reason we do this, we started off by doing it just because we thought, well, what a nice way to interact with people and give them an opportunity to ask their questions. And then we had the idea one night. I said, well, we're always trying to raise funds because in the Purple Heart Project, we cover their airfare, their hotel, their meals. We send each vet home with somewhere around $3,200 to $3,500 worth of tools. Now we actually provide them with a bench as well. The volunteer provides the materials. We provide the vise and the bench dog. So, of course, all that costs money, right? So a lot of people want to participate. So here's how you get to participate. You can make a donation that will go directly towards one of those expenses. So you go to our website under the PHP, the link will be in there on the screen somewhere down below, and you can choose whatever level of donation you want. It costs, we gotta revise this, but we say $3,500 per vet. It's actually more than that now that we've included the bench. So if you want to cover the entire cost of a vet, it's $3,500. If you want to cover anything in between, you're welcome to do that. We applaud you for doing it, but you will be the benefactor. Trust me. That's the reason why we do this. You feel so good about being able to do something to help alleviate their suffering that it just makes you feel like you just climbed Mount Everest. So what we do to help to give you back something for that is we do a draw at the end of the night for a $100 gift certificate. And every $1,000 increment of donations, we throw in another $100 gift certificate.
And that comes from you, not from the donations.
Yes, that doesn't come out of the donations. That comes out of RC Woodworking. I know, what's our business called?
RC Woodworking Hand Tools, Inc.
Thank you, Frick.
I see it on my checks.
Oh, yes, see, yeah. And doesn't pay,
once a year.
it doesn't pay him either. I might add, Frick donates his time to this, as does Rex, as does Jake, as does Megan, as does Ken Anthony, as does Luther, as does Super Dave. Am I forgetting anybody? And Frick also does a barbecue, if you're ever in New Brunswick. It's called the Frickin' Good Barbecue. And we do that as a means of generating revenue for the Purple Heart Project.
And raise local awareness, which helps too.
Yes.
All right, ready for another question?
Yep.
All right, this is from Scott Mayer from Tallahassee, Florida.
Scott?
Do you use a right or
I know
left-handed?
Scott.
Do you use a left or right-handed skew block plane when cutting the rabbit for dovetails? And is one better than the other?
Well, so what Scott's referring to is the little rabbit or rebate. Rabbit if you're in Canada, United States. Rebate if you're in the UK. And what it is a I'll just do it. So if I was going to dovetail this board, I want to be able to register the two pieces, the tail board to the pin board. So on the tail board, people often mistakenly put this on the pin board. This goes on the tail board. Cut it, you scribe a line like that. Now, I use the right skew, and I'll show you why. In order to do this, you need to have, Jake, there it is. You need to have the board supported on your bench. Needs to lay flat, but it needs to hang over so that I can operate this plane. You don't want it hanging out too far because I'm going to push down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen the thumb screw so that I can slide the fence over, and I want the blade to be right on that line. Lock it. The blade is skewed. The nice thing about that is two things. Number one, it'll leave a smooth possible surface when cutting across the grain. Number two, the action of the skew pulls the plane this way to keep it tight to the end of the board. You have to start this with just this little area for reference, and gravity's wanting it to fall back like that. So this hand is turning like that.
Should mention the fence.
Oh yes, Jake actually now provides fences. So when you buy it from sells. When you buy the Lee Nielsen tool, there's no wood involved except for the knob right here. So this comes extra, and the reason why I add it is because I like to have some registration of the plane before the blade engages, and when I end, I like to have some registration so that I'm not swinging around like that at the very end. So we now make skew block fences that come beveled like that with the screws and all set to attach. I choose the right, and the right skew opens up on the right side as I hold the blade in the user position. If I was left-handed and my bench would be reversed, then I would want to do the other side. If I was using the left skew, if I had the left skew here, I wouldn't be able to do it this way. I'd have to clamp it on out there in the end. I find it awkward. I used to have both the right and the left. I sold the left because I never used it. So what you do is you engage like so. Now I suspect that board's not perfectly flat because it skipped right here. And you cut a little rebate or rabbet. Always better to take multiple light passes than to try to do it in one heavy pass. Now that ended up with a really smooth surface. Now when I would lay that tail board on top of the pin board, that little rabbet would help would register the two pieces precisely. Comes up against that little ledge that we cut. Comes up against the underside of the pin board, and you don't have to trying to line them like this. It's great. I highly recommend this. Lee Nielsen's makes a great plane. I think I prefer this one over anybody else's version of the skew block. Can't tell you why. I just am very comfortable with it, like it. I think it's a good deal. In fact, so much so that we added to the tool list of tools we're sending vets home with this year, and that's one of them. We're going to, and Lee Nielsen was very gracious. I asked him. He provides us with 2 mortise chisels for each vet every time we teach, complimentary. I asked him if he would allow us to buy the skew block planes at a wholesale price to give to the vets. I said, you don't need to donate it. You're doing your part. And he graciously said yes. This year may be dicey because they've been shut down for a long time because of this coronavirus, so we don't know what's going to happen, but we've got our fingers crossed. Got all my fingers crossed. Make sure this thing goes. We got time for another few words?
One more question.
Well, maybe it's a short one. We got time. Go ahead, Frick.
Maybe it's a short one.
Well, yeah, this one it's from Joey Walsh in North Carolina.
Hi, Joey.
And he's wondering about the PHP. He said, is there anything a less experienced woodworker can do besides donate to help the PHP? I'd love to help with the benches, but I don't believe I have the experience.
Well, how can you help with the Purple Heart project? Well, buy a T-shirt. Now, the proceeds don't go to the Purple Heart project. We sell these T-shirts to help raise awareness. Our single biggest problem is finding the people who need it. Unless you suffer from PTSD, then we have no idea what it's like. But I've been around enough of them to know that it's a real battle. It's a battle that claims 22 a day. So the need is great. So yes, you can help by telling everyone you know. Conversation is easy to bring up. And if it's hard for you to talk about it, wear a shirt. Somebody's going to ask you, wood is good. Wood for good. Wood doing good. What's that all about? Well, now you can tell them. Second way is financially. We can always use funds. It's the necessary part of this. It costs money. Nothing goes down in price. Everything goes up. Third way is we recently had someone donate Paul Rigney has donated a guitar made by the East Tennessee Luthiers Guild that's being auctioned off, and those proceeds will go to Purple Heart. We recently received a beautiful, remember the chap's name? Shaker box.
He's from
Michigan.
War Creek, or
Yeah, beautiful box, and we're going to auction that off for the Purple Heart. Any other ways they can? Pray for us. Pray for the vets. Pray for the people that really need it. Pray that we can find them.
Battle Creek, Michigan.
Battle Creek, Michigan. Yeah, I apologize. I can't remember his name, but it was beautiful work. I featured it last week. You can come and take the class if you want to participate. If you want to participate in the, you said you didn't think you had the skill. Well, you never know until you try. But Jack Lane is in charge of the bench brigade, and contact Jack. Well, here, contact Jack. Now we're kind of filled right at the moment. We've had 80 volunteers, but anybody else would like to help out, we'd love to have a donation to cover the cost of the vise. We have a stack of vices at our front door that's 2 feet high, 2 feet high by 4 feet by 4 feet. The vices are $265 or something. The bench dogs are $25 a piece. And
$30 a piece.
$30 a piece, and we got to ship each one of those to all the different people that have signed up. So you just think about the postage on all that. It's going to be expensive.
And we've had other people donate things to be like Jeff's shaving kit, and
Yeah. Oh, where's the
someone
where's
else
the bowl
did
Jeff
a
sent?
stained glass window.
For what? What do you mean?
The shaving bowl.
Well, it's out there.
We should show it. Rex, can you get that shaving bowl with the shaving? Does he know where it is?
No.
Jeff sent me. If you go on Jeff's site, what's Jeff's Facebook page?
It's on both.
Because Jeff has actually made one and donated it. O'Connor Woodworking. Is it Jeff O'Connor Woodworking or just O'Connor Woodworking?
No, it's O'Connor.
O'Connor Woodworking. And Jeff makes, mine's made out of bog oak. And he just sent me a bowl with soap so I can get to use it tomorrow. I get a shave once a week. Mitch does my shave for me. I pay him well. Gets the hot towel treatment, the whole bit, and the shave brush. I waited so long to actually get that. We use it every time. Anyway, so yeah, be creative. Come up with a new idea. Someone recently suggested that if you want to donate a tool, pay for the cost of a tool that we'll use and donate that back to one of the vets in the class. Frick, any other short ones?
No, you should wrap it up.
Yeah?
Yeah.
This is fun.
How many draws are we doing? Just one? Ooh,
One draw?
that won't take long.
Well, let's be nice and do two. Are we anywhere near 2,000? 15? We'll do two anyway. All right, so next week is we're back to working on Angie's bed desk. It's a side hung drawer, first time I've ever done this. It's gonna be fun. It's made out of northern white pine, beautiful wood, beautiful warm wood. And Angie's getting anxious to get her desk.
Ken actually sent me a funny.
What?
We just had a $1,000 donation. So.
Thank you. Who did that?
Kenneth Coleman.
Kenneth Coleman, thank you. Thank you. In that case, we'll draw three.
I was just
Any more
saying
vets
that.
to say hello to?
There's a lot that are coming in on future classes. We have Eric, Carlos, Robert, and Matt.
Eric, Carlos, Robert, and Matt. I hope to see you guys really soon. We would have already had our first class over and done. We're getting ready for our second class. Feels weird to have gone this long without doing it, but Hopefully all this crap will be behind us very soon and we'll be able to do it. I so look forward to it. You don't know. It is a ton of work, but you'll never experience a week go by faster than this.
You just need to see some new faces. You're sick of ours.
Who needs new faces?
And Super Dave's
need- you
wife
need to
needs
see
it to
new-
happen too.
What's that?
Super Dave's wife needs it to happen too.
Yeah. We're the reason why Super Dave has a happy marriage. Because we take him half the year.
I was just going to say that at the beginning of the episode when you were talking about all the intro stuff, and you said, am I forgetting anything? And this is before you mentioned Angie, and Angie yelled at the screen and said me. And she's so happy that your voice is better, and I think the rest of us
Yes,
are too.
Ange, thank you. Ken gives me all the messages from you, and I was doing what my wife told me, and she had me full of good stuff that made me better.
All right.
It's nice to have voice back. Are we drawing?
Yeah, we're drawing.
Okay, draw
We're doing-
3.
We're doing 3.
Yeah.
Zoom in on that, Jake. All right. Our first winner is Tad Bennett from Georgia.
Tad?
Mm-hmm.
Tad, congratulations.
Winner number 2, Roger Dunn from Arizona.
Roger, congratulations.
And last but not least, Tony Joy from Maryland.
Tony from Maryland, congratulations. All right, last thing I want to tell you about this. Don't forget to get a t-shirt. This is our new one in, you call that khaki green?
Olive drab, isn't it?
Olive drab.
Someone
wood
said it
for
was.
good.
Someone said it was general green, like your
Oh
tools.
yeah, almost, not quite. Very close. Actually, it is very close. And we took the font off of MASH because I'm a big MASH fan. Challenge me on a MASH question next time. So that's wood for good, and that's got the new logo. So the new logo is a little larger, easier to see, and we switched it around thanks to Frick. Get all 3.
That was actually an accident.
I knew it was an accident. I said thanks to Frick. Wood is good. Wood doing good. We have them in small, medium, large, extra large, 2X large, and 3X large. And there are 7 days in a week, and you want a new shirt for each day. We have people that do that. All right. Any final words? Next week, 6 o'clock. Bring a friend. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you'll know when we're releasing 2 very professionally produced videos each week. Frick and Luther work a long time before the video is actually released. Tell us what you think, new thumbnails, the whole bit. Trying to improve our presence to the public. And don't forget our newsletter. Our newsletter is full of content. We just released it. What was the topic of this time? Dust collection. So there's always 1 or 2 videos on the topic as well as a written article.
We haven't sent that out yet.
Oh, it hasn't gone out yet? Oh, there. You get a chance to see it before it even comes out. So in the description, there'll be a place where you can register for the newsletter. Okay, so we'll be back to the Q&A in 2 weeks. Next weekend is our build. Hope you have a good week. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your time in the shop. Be nice to everybody. And please thank a vet. See you.